Welcome to another episode of VGN Weekly. Members of the Virtual Grip crew will recap the previous week's races and bring us one-on-one interviews with racers, league owners, and commentators, as well as others from within the sim racing community. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's go find some grip.
As the Virtual Grip Network gears up for another action-packed week of racing, let's take a quick look back at last week's race winners. Patrick Stout had a dominant performance, leading the race for the majority of the 100 laps in the Red Light Racing SK Modified Series from Thompson Speedway. He started from pole position and chose the outside line, which proved to be advantageous. Despite a few cautions and a significant crash near the end involving the leading drivers, Stout managed to stay out and win the race. His strategy was simple: stay on the outside and protect that line, while managing his tires to the very end. Even when his brother, Eric Stout, made a late push for the lead, Patrick maintained his position and ultimately secured the victory. Starting from fourth on the grid, Mike Holloway took a measured approach for much of the race, steadily closing the gap to the leader. A strange twist unfolded under caution when an issue with the restart order unexpectedly placed him at the front of the field. Seizing the opportunity, Holloway managed his pace and tires with precision. Once in control, he gradually pulled away, turning a chaotic moment into a strategic advantage. His composed drive earned him the victory in the Bootleg Racing League's late model series at Martinsville Speedway. Courtney Nelson delivered a steady and strategic drive in the OBRL's Yesteryear Cup Series at Pocono Raceway. He led a large portion of the race while managing tire wear with precision. When late race cautions shook up the field, Nelson chose to stay out, gaining track position over those who pitted. Holding off challengers on fresher tires, he maintained control in the closing laps and sealed a smart win under a green-white checkered finish. Now we'll take a quick break before turning things over to John Heyn to discuss the Bootleg Racing League's return to dirt racing.
Welcome back to this week's edition of VGN Weekly. We are going to have a unique show today where the topic is dirt. We're not going to just get to know a couple of drivers here, but we're going to get to reintroduce dirt to BRL. And this week, we are going to have none other than the two of what my opinion is two of the best dirt racers that we do have right now in the BRL for that Friday night series. I got Brandon Combs and Steven Spies. How are you guys today?
Doing great.
Doing pretty good. How you guys doing?
Doing good. I appreciate you guys giving me a little bit of time here today. And first of all, I'm going to start with you, Steven, real quick. give me kind of a little bit of a background, who you are, kind of the iRacer, Steven. You know, what kind of cars you enjoy, and all that kind of good stuff.
As you obviously know, John, I'll race anything. If it's on iRacing, I'm willing to give it a go. I joined iRacing after selling my real dirt car, which would have been, 10 years ago now, I think. Dirt hadn't come out yet, but I still needed to scratch that competitive itch, so got into it. Played, video games growing up, was always interested in any types of racing, road racing, etc. So, I spend my time now pretty much only in leagues on iRacing, obviously BRL, the new Skidder Creek Drivers Club on Friday nights. If anybody hasn't checked it out and you want to just try road racing, come join us on Friday nights. It's a real fun league run by Lowell and Edward Foster as well, helping there. So, what do? We do endurance racing. I don't know the last time I ran an official anything that was an endurance race, but found a home in leagues.
Yep, that's where it's at now. And Brandon, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what is your specialty in iRacing?
Yeah, I've been running on iRacing since 2020, I believe it was. I think it was like COVID, right before it got
COVID
real
driver.
bad.
Okay.
Well, my account says it's been from 2017 because there was one point where I got on before COVID, and I just didn't really have the PC and equipment and stuff to really be competitive about it. So I kind of got away from it, and then COVID happened and couldn't go racing in real life. So went ahead and got into it pretty hard, and been running a bunch of dirt stuff ever since. I used to race flat carts for about 13 years, run those carts on dirt and stuff, and then did some crewing on dirt super late models for a couple years as well. And yeah, mainly just run a bunch of dirt stuff on iRacing. I've been dabbling into the asphalt oval world, and been running a lot of in dirt stuff as well lately, which that stuff's a blast as well. And been running a bunch of leagues lately. The only officials I really run, I right there with Steven, has just been endurance racing, really. I'm actually registered for the 1 o'clock GT3 race at Daytona with a couple buddies, so we'll see how that goes.
It's funny, Steven and I almost ran that yesterday. That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this, Brandon. What car would you say is in your wheelhouse?
I'd say probably right now the Pro Late models for sure.
Yeah, it shows on Friday.
If you asked me this a couple months ago, I probably would have said like a 358 modified or like the big block modifieds, one of those two. But I haven't really run those a whole lot lately, and when I do run them, I feel like a fish out of water.
How about you, Steven? Which car is you feel like is in your wheelhouse?
Obviously, we've got a ton of laps in the Pro Late model and the Super Late model, so I like those. But all things being equal, if there was races on same track, same number of drivers and everything in it, give me the non-wing 360 or the midget. I'll take either one of those. I really enjoy the non-wing cars, open wheel.
So you like cars that actively try to kill you as you're driving?
Yes,
got it.
I do. I want to feel like I really have to drive it. Whether it's on pavement or whatever else. If it's trying to kill us, I'm probably having more fun in it.
Well, guys, as you both know, that we've brought BRL back to dirt, and BRL ran dirt, a couple of years back, and really successful. The cars that they ran at that time were street stocks. This time around, they're going to run the Pro Late models around Friday night. And there's a big mix of drivers in this series. Or you've got guys like you guys that know these cars, know how to get around them, but you also got a lot of guys that are new to dirt racing, haven't raced dirt before, much less drove a dirt late model. So my first question is going to be you, Brandon. What is your advice that you would give folks to improved racecraft? What do you think is the first thing that you should learn when you pull out onto a dirt track for the first time?
I feel like you really need to try to figure out what kind of wheel range you like to go ahead and put into the car once you get set into the corner. But then it's also just, it's hard to say pinpoint accurate for sure what's the first thing to learn, because there's so many nuances to dirt racing for guys that don't have a ton of experience with it or anything like that. I feel like probably the biggest thing would be watch someone, see how they're driving into the corner, see how deep they're driving in, how sideways they're getting the car. And then second thing would probably be trying to emulate what that fast guy or your buddy or whatever it is doing as well to try to get faster for yourself. It's really just trying to get comfortable with the car, getting it sideways, playing with the throttle with your foot, and just trying to keep the thing under you and keep the tires under you without wheel spinning them too much.
Yeah, Brendan, the one thing that I hear a lot from guys is, they have difficulty getting the car to rotate.
Yes.
How do what is your trick to getting the car to rotate, whether you're running the bottom or whether you're running the top?
Well, the biggest thing that I learned from one of my buddies was just drive it harder. Drive it in there deeper. It'll turn eventually. If it doesn't turn, then just slam the brake. But, I mean, it should turn eventually on its own if you drive it in deep enough and have enough throttle with it.
And Steven, you've driven these things quite a bit also, and I know that you've heard that complaint too, is, getting the car to rotate and things like that and getting them pointed straight. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of driving the cars, not necessarily hanging the back out all the time, that full drift, but kind of keeping them somewhat straight and still trying to get them pointed coming out of the corner?
Yeah, I think one of the big differences, while maybe some of the more modern pavement cars do have some rear steer in them, it's nothing like what you get with the dirt car. If you go watch, a World of Outlaws, Lucas Oil late model race or something like that, really take a look at how much that left rear turns into the car. It comes forward and the rear end turns at an angle. So that's a big difference coming from pavement, where you're letting off the gas, maybe tapping a little bit of brake to get the car to turn into the corner. On these, like Brandon said, you got to keep more throttle in it, because that's really what's turning the car. It's a fine line, right? You have to learn, and this is something I struggle with and why I don't quite keep up with guys like Brandon, is where that line is for wheel spin. You can use wheel spin to your advantage to turn the car into the corner, but it's really hard to find. And if you overdo it, that car's going sideways on you. So it's learning that fine line. You do want the car to drift. Really, whenever the car is sideways, the rear end's probably somewhat square to the track, though. The car is sideways, but the rear end is still straight, and you don't want to overdo that. So little nuances. It's hard to maybe see on iRacing, but go find some YouTube videos and whatever else and understand what the rear end of these cars does. And I think it'll help make a little more sense to people that aren't familiar with it.
Well, you talked a little bit about wheel spin, and on dirt, that's a big deal, especially, coming out of the corner. Too much wheel spin, you just kill your lap time. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that feel like, or how can you tell that you're getting too much? What is your benchmark? Oh, that was too much wheel spin that lap.
The guy in front of me takes off the corner and I can't keep up with him. It's usually the best indicator. But as far as iRacing goes, let's say when you're coming off the corner, you typically, not every track, but if it's there, you want to be up towards the cushion coming off the corner, and be careful squeezing that throttle down. If you have to make a big wheel adjustment coming off the corner at all, you're probably spinning your tires. It doesn't feel like a real car quite, but if you're wobbling and things and it kind of wants to go towards the wall as you're coming off the corner or going down the straightaway, you're probably spinning your tires.
Yeah, and Brandon
maybe has some more insight.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Brandon too, because he's a resident expert here, so we'll defer to him on that. Tire spin, man. Brandon, how it's important. So you're really good about getting the power down and getting out of the corners. To me, that's your strong suit. From what I've seen on the track. Walk me through that. How do you judge how much throttle you need, and where's the line when it becomes too much?
Yeah, I try to use a fine balance that I found that I like feel-wise between what I'm seeing visually and how much wheel I have into it. for exits of the corners to keep the car kind of straight, but yet still have the drive off and not have the wheel spin. Another thing that I've figured out too is I changed some of my sound settings to where I can actually hear like my engine revving up faster, or I can hear my tires get kind of louder all of a sudden. So it's like I can hear it start the wheel spin on its own, and then I can ease out of the throttle a little bit. That's like when I'm running the bottom, I try to wait as long as I can before I get wide open and keep the car in the moisture. And then when you're running the top, I feel like if you are coming about that 3/4 mark, exit of the corner, if you're still having to put a ton of wheel into the car and you're chasing the wall all the way around and you're kind of wide open, 3/4 throttle or something like that, you probably have too much throttle in it, because now you're just killing time by drifting out too far and you're not able to drive the car straight off the corner to have that straightaway speed. But yeah, those are some of the things that I look for. Like if I find myself having still a ton of wheel into it on exit, then I know that was too much throttle. If I can't hear it at the time. But yeah, it's definitely a fine line and a dance to play with.
You mentioned visually, coming out of the corner, because that's something you do very much. I visually look, because you can kind of see where the slick is, where the slick ends on dirt. What are you looking at visually as your cue to maybe start rolling more aggressively back into the throttle?
So if my right front flopper is pointed down the racetrack at more of an angle than what the radius of the corner is, then I know the car's too sideways. Then I know that I either have too much throttle, carry too much speed, or I'm just lighting the tires up. It's one of those three things that are happening. So then it's like you try to get that right front flopper to kind of go along with the radius of the wall, if it has a wall, and except for like Lernerville, then you're trying to just keep the radius with the corner of it going. But yeah, I use that right front a lot visually to see how sideways am I, how tight am I, or how loose am I. And when the track gets really slick, then I kind of try to keep the right front more straighter. I'm driving the car off the right front instead of so much trying to just drive it off the rear. And I'm trying to just momentum it all.
Well, the two of you put on a heck of a show Friday night, because you guys ran 1-2. And I had the luxury of being behind you guys and watching the race unfold. And by the way, you guys could have done me a favor and just wrecked each other. Just know I was disappointed that you guys didn't do that.
I never got close enough to him to try it, John.
But the no mirrors part. First, I'll take the question to you, Stephen. To get over to in the second, you did a slide job on me. So without the mirrors, talk to us a little bit about having to make passes and doing passes like that without the luxury of glancing up and seeing if you're clear or not.
I guess I'll start by saying I think no mirrors is fabulous.
Yes.
I'm in one or two other leagues, a midget league and another one that don't run mirrors. And I find personally that the racing is honestly much better. It's a little cleaner. People tend to leave room because you don't know where things are. So you're a little more worried about it versus thinking you have room. And
people get
also,
faster too because they're not looking in their mirror.
They're looking forward. Yep, that's just what I was about to say. I think people are looking forward more and seeing what's going on. As far as how to do that, sometimes it's a little bit of, especially if I'm passing you, John. It's a little bit of a wish and a prayer, but I know that we'll for the most part take care of each other. And if I mess it up, I'm probably going to get it back, so I'll just have to be cautious about it. But it really is just laps. I don't think there's a whole lot more that you can say about it to somebody just coming in, as far as how to make passes and things like that if they haven't run on a dirt track without a mirror before. But you just, at the end of the day, you just have to take care of each other a little bit. If it's early in the race, and this is what I did whenever I was on a real dirt track, right? I don't want to injure myself. I don't want to hurt somebody else, either physically or our pocketbooks, if I can avoid it. So, the first lap or two of a race, if I wasn't 100% sure that I didn't hear anybody outside of me, and I was kind of running low off the corner, I probably was going to leave a lane outside until I was really confident there wasn't somebody there. Because the last thing I wanted to do was drift up and, put a right rear into somebody's left front, turn me into the corner, especially in the little mod lights that I ran, because that probably meant with that super short wheelbase you were taking a tumble. So we just really had to take care of each other, and I think it transfers pretty well. You just have to start learning that awareness and how to take care of each other a little more.
And Brandon, there was a late restart in that race the other night. So, you knew, okay, you got some guys behind you. You're able to know that Steven was to your outside. I think I was behind you. Not having that mirror, how do you, what were you doing to, not to, I hate to ask you your secrets, but what is your approach then, because you got to be a little defensive a little bit on a situation like that.
Yeah, just a little bit. I've learned over the years too, with like the relative and stuff, how that works. Like, I'll glance at that a lot. Like, when there's no mirrors on or something like that, I always have the relative up, and that's kind of like my mirror per se. A lot of people though, like, they don't know how accurate it is, and like, I really don't know how accurate it is, but like, I kind of use like a feeler as like 0.2 on the relative is close, 0.3 you're clear. That's kind of my rule of thumb that I've kind of learned over the last year or so with this no mirror stuff on iRacing. But there was a point in time too where as soon as that no mirrors came on, where you could turn that on or off, I just turned it off because I felt like it made me a better racer and my racecraft was better just from not having it. And I was able to, whenever I go to throw a slider, just commit to it. I feel like that's a lot of the problem with like some hosted races and then in other league races and stuff where issues happen is like you go to throw a slider and people they don't commit to it. But there is that time though too where you got to back out of it. If you're not going to clear them or not, you got to back out of it. You can't just keep going and just slide into the guy and just take him out. So it is a respect thing.
Yeah, you and I were trading sliders there for a while during that race Friday night. It was a lot of fun, and then it dawned on me, it's like, man, we're really using up our right rears and all that trying to do that. But that's a great point about sometimes. I hate to. I mean, drivers don't like to hear this, but sometimes you got to give up.
Yeah,
and say,
you do.
And maybe rethink how you're going to do that. And then that's essentially what I've done, because I think we could have. You and I'm pretty sure we could have kept trading sliders for the next 10 laps.
Oh yeah,
the way that was setting up pretty easily. But at the end of that, that would have helped Steven out a lot, because we would have used our stuff up and Steven would have drove around us both. But when you were racing though Friday night, that battle, because what was that caution? That caution came out with what, like 5 laps to go or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you change your line? I mean, do you feel like, from not having the mirrors, you've got to pick your line. You got to commit to a line and stick with it, and that's what you did. And it happened to be, the faster line on the track. Tell us a little bit about the importance of, you talked about the commitment with the slide job. Well, tell me about the commitment of choosing a line and sticking with it.
Yeah, I feel like when we got so long in the race and got so late in it, it's like everyone knows kind of what works for them, what they feel comfortable with. So I felt pretty comfortable with running the middle of the racetrack in 1 and 2 and staying in the moisture on exit and running like that slider up to the wall in 3 and 4. So I was like, I just going to commit to it and keep doing it. And if I hear Steven on my outside off of 2, then we're going to race it out and we're going to throw some bombs and see what happens here. But thankfully for me, that didn't happen. So I didn't really have to worry about that too much, because I don't really know how much more my right rear could have took of throwing massive haymakers. Because it was hurting a little bit. I didn't really get good traction out of 4. I was really able to get good traction out of 2 if I missed the grip strip a little bit down there where I was trying to get off the exit. But yeah, you just gotta find something that you're comfortable with and just commit to it. And the no mirrors part definitely test drivers on trying to figure out different lanes and lines and stuff to be able to figure out if that's faster or not without just having the mirror be like, oh, well, that wasn't faster. So.
Yeah, again, the no mirrors. I think all of us are in unison on that. That is such a good thing not to have those on. Stephen, you were chasing Brandon down, and this kind of goes back to maybe a teachable moment here, because there was moments where you could have either moved Brandon, got your nose up under, especially on that last lap. I think you were close enough. If you wanted to send it a little bit and get into him a little bit, it would have been really easy to do. But in the same token, you could have accidentally done that probably just as easy, getting a little zealous into the corner. In these cars, when you start racing each other, and I touched a little bit about, commitment to when you get to a corner, commit high, commit low. Tell me a little bit when you're actually racing somebody, and trying to do it from an offensive standpoint, picking where you go. I mean, tell us how you set up a pass, I guess, is what I'm really trying to get to.
Excuse me. Generally on iRacing, you've kind of got one line that works, and fast guys like Brandon figure that out typically pretty quickly. So it's a lot harder that you can't hide your line, if you will, here as much as maybe you can sometimes in real life. But I don't know if I maybe had a little more tire than Brandon or what the case was. I was running some slightly different lines on Friday night, just using that as an example. And I was trying to figure out where I was making time on him, where are you closing that gap, which is just an eyeball thing, right? Kind of seeing where you're at.
Yep.
And that last little run that we had after the caution, I was watching that, and it felt like I could get a decent run on him. And what I was actually trying to do was on the white flag. I felt like I had momentum built up coming to the white flag and was going to come close to his tail based on the line he'd been running, but run it up to the cushion on 1 and 2. And I was getting good runs off on the top of 2 where he was running more middle. And I thought I was going to be able to get enough momentum. There was a couple times I thought I was going to be able to get my nose outside of him. And I was just going to commit to it. And if he came up high, I could cut under and throw a sider in 3 and 4 or whatever the case may be. He did a smart thing, and I don't know if it was different or just because of tire wear or whatever, but going into turn 1 on that last lap, he either braked a little different or let out and rolled it, and it really killed my momentum, and I had to get on the brakes a little bit and not take the line I wanted. So, you just got to hope that the guy's going to be running the line he has run, and find out, like I said, you got to find that spot where you're making ground and how you can utilize it. How to teach that, I have no idea. Like I said, I think as much as anything, it's just laps and running the car enough that you really feel comfortable with it. I think that guys that haven't run dirt, if you're just probably running the dirt car on Friday night, come out, have fun, absolutely do that, but you're probably going to have to practice that one more to really get the feel for it and be comfortable with it to get the speed that you want.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't run the dirt and may be interested, here's the format for Friday nights. We're not actually doing the iRacing. If you go to an iRacing open server, those are 30 lap features in there. We actually go 50 laps. That's why you keep hearing us talk about tire wear and things like that. The tire wear, at least what my experience has been, is it seems to show up and become a difference maker probably about lap 40. You could run 40 laps all out if you want. If you do that, you're probably going to be hanging on from lap 40 to 50. Brandon, you talked about tire wear a little bit earlier too. So, what is your thoughts on how the tire wear is played out? And does that actually, in your mind, like when the green flag flies on lap 1?
At some tracks, yeah, like Eldora, it was definitely on my mind. I feel like a bunch of the bigger tracks and with the sweeping corners and stuff, like tire wear is on my mind. As soon as the green flag comes out. So like the first 10 laps or so, I really worried about just trying to keep my right rear under me, don't spin it, don't get the car too sideways. So I decided to run the bottom of the racetrack on both ends for a while. and kind of picked off some spots that way. And then once I got past like the 9-10 lap point of the first run of the race, and I was like, well, let's go race and see if we can take the fight to you, John, and get the lead, hopefully, and then be able to just maintain and try to save the tire that way as well, just trying to maintain a little bit of a gap. But yeah, I'd definitely say if you go hard on the big tracks in a 50-lap race, about lap 40, you're going to be holding on for dear life. And I felt like I was holding on for dear life about the last 3 laps there because I didn't really have a whole lot to lean on. So I was trying, like under caution and stuff, to just keep some heat in the tires to see if maybe that would help a little bit. Because I feel like when they get cold under caution, it's almost like how it is in real life. They seal over, and it doesn't have the grip that you had by just keep running nonstop.
Yeah, that's the as they've updated those tire models, that problem has actually gotten worse. Where if they cool off too much under caution, you go to fire off, and the characteristics of the car actually change, and you never know that either until you get into turn 1, and you think the car's got to do something, and you're like, uh-oh.
One more point maybe there, John, is we were talking earlier about, how to get the car to turn, and we were talking about using a little bit of wheel spin, but on these longer races, you do have to be careful with that. If you're over rotating it and really spinning those tires and getting it really sideways going in, that's what's going to kill your tire wear.
Yeah, well, especially on the bigger tracks like at your Eldora, because you're carrying all that speed into the corner, and then you're just sliding the tire across the track. So, even if you're not getting the wheel spin, you're still sliding the car aggressively across the track, and that will put wear into it. With the format being the 50 laps, just out of curiosity, and then Brandon, I'll start with you. What is your take on the laps? I know that we've run a Pro Dirt Late Model Series, where we've done 100 lappers. Where do you think your sweet? Do you think 50 is the sweet spot, or what do you think of the laps?
I'd say like 50 to 60 is for sure the sweet spot, where you're going to have good racing throughout the whole field. Everyone's going to be going relatively hard at times. But then at the same time too, though, like I like those 100 lappers because it's like who's gonna try to pace themselves for the first 20, 30 laps or whatever it is, and then go at it the last 70 or however many laps they decide to just ride around and stuff. And there's some guys that will save really hard and just run hard enough to where they don't go a lap down and then come on at the end like a rocket ship. And then there's other guys that will kind of just, if they start in the top 5 or something, they try to just stay there, maintain, and keep up with guys, and then try to go hard, and hopefully that they burnt their stuff up by seeing the guys in front of them running a little bit harder, possibly. But it's all just it's all a game. It really is. It's all just a mind game and what kind of strategy you're wanting to play.
Which makes those 100 lappers fun.
Yeah, it does. I do think, though, like the 50 to 60 is like the sweet spot for like the best type of racing with tire saving. But I also think like the 100 lappers are interesting in their own different way, just from who's riding around saving their stuff.
Well, those 100 lappers, the first 15 laps, 20 laps of those races, I figure, at least for me, you're running that race at half throttle, and all the guys that have sense to manage their tires, everybody's running half throttle, and always there's always 1 or 2 that are going up there to get the lead. They go by us pretty quick, but at least with the 50, and I agree with you, the 50, it seems like you can still race. You just got to be a little less, a little careful. How about you, Steven? The 50 laps, I know you've run everything from 30. You've even done some of those Pro Dirt Late Model races where we've run 100. So what is your view on that 50 laps?
Yeah, I like a short race where you can just run the heck out of it the whole time and just race it out. But I do think that the 50 to 60 lap adds the strategy. I'd kind of echo what Brandon said. It's enough that you can race pretty much the whole time, but you can have some tire wear strategy to it of, I'm not going to run, maybe I'm going to run 80 or 90% instead of 100% early and save a little something, or I'm going to run down in the moisture at the bottom instead of up on the cushion, whatever the case may be. So the 100 lappers, I think they're okay occasionally. It's a completely different style of racing, like you guys said, in the pro late model dirt series. Whenever we were running some of those longer races, you get a glut of like 8 or 10 cars, all, like you said, running 50 or 60% throttle, it feels like. And kind of lap after lap, as you keep going, it gets just maybe a little faster. Then somebody's like, well, I don't want to lose, too much track position, so they go a little faster. And and then finally somebody just opens it up and you all just go. And it's a different strategy. It can be interesting, but give me something I can just run the heck out of, and I'm happy. Like I said, put me in a nice non-wing 360 sprint car and give me 25 laps, and I'm having a great time.
We put you in the non-wing and make you run 100.
That sounds horrible.
It sounds tiring. I think I'm too old to try that.
Can even run 100 laps on fuel?
I don't think so.
I've never tried. Well, I mean, no, they probably don't, because I know that the winged 360s, if you pack those full of fuel, like at a place like Knoxville, you can get right at 50 laps, but you do have to do a little fuel strategy to get there. The first maybe 5-10 laps,
Gotcha.
you got to run about 80%, and then you can get there. But yeah, the different the different laps on dirt is interesting. But you guys were talking a little bit about sometimes running the top, running the bottom, and that's one of the cool things that I love about dirt is you always have options. You can pass them where they're not. If you can hit things right, you can make, at least in my opinion, 9 times out of 10, you can make any lane on the track work. You just got to hit it right. You have to hit it right every lap. I mean, are there times where one lane is better than the other? Absolutely. But if you hit another lane and you can hit it perfect, you can cause some problems and then make some headway. So I'm gonna go to Brandon first here, and since we got 2 different lines here, running the bottom. If you decide it's a bottom feeder track, tell me what you're doing. What different are you doing behind the wheel than you would be, let's say, if you're running the top?
I'm really just trying to get the car to rotate early on entry quicker than I would on the top, trying to set up the exit, because you're going to be at a deficit on exit compared to the top if the guy hits it right, because they're going to have such a longer straightaway than what you're going to have. So I'm trying really hard to just get the car to rotate early to where I can get the power down as quick as I can while running the bottom. And then a lot of times though too, like that means you gotta lift earlier, you gotta use a little bit of brake, and try to really work on getting that timing right from where you get the car rotated and then you give it throttle, just to be able to drive it as straight as you can off the bottom and make the straightaway as long as you can as well.
You talked about the brake in that one of the most asked questions that I've got, especially on when we did some practices on Thursday, where drivers asking me, the 3-wheel brakes. There's actually a switch in the car. You can turn your have 3 brakes on the car. You can have 4. What do you do? How do you come to the decision to make it 3 or make it to 4?
Really just depends on like how slick the racetrack is, I feel like, and where I'm trying to run. If I need the car to be more on the right front and be more right front dependent, then I'll turn it to 4-wheel brake. I'll turn that right front on to try to help it on entry a little bit. If the track's kind of heavy and stuff like that, like I don't even think about turning the right front on. Like There's no thought for me to do it. Like at Eldora, I never did it, but it also comes back to, like, for me, I like on the big sweeping tracks, just leave it 3-wheel brake and don't even think about it, because then you could just change where you're momentuming the corner, essentially. They kind of counteract for turning a 4-wheel brake on or not having it on.
Yeah, and I mean, that's basically what I do too. I like it when I'm actually running the bottom, probably more than the top, because I don't know why the three just helps the car rotate a little bit better on the top. But Steven, how about you? Let's take you and put you, you're a guy that likes to run the wall. So what? Tell me the little nuances that you do differently when you're up there, riding the fence compared to what you do when you're down there bottom feeding.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brandon covered it pretty well. Let's just take Eldora as an example of one that you're really riding the wall, or like a Lernerville, where you have to be really careful if you're trying to ride that top edge of Lernerville. I don't know how to describe it sometimes, but you do have to let out of the throttle and kind of roll it into the corner. But you need to leave enough that you're not getting the car flat. Because again, you want that rear end working and helping you turn. So if I'm letting out, I don't think that I typically let all the way out of the throttle like I would do, say, last night in BRL at Martinsville. I'm letting out while I'm still on the straightaway all the way and rolling the car, getting it to turn with the brake a little bit. If I'm on the top in a dirt car at Eldora, I'm letting out, but I'm not letting all the way out of the gas. You've got to give it a little bit so that chassis keeps working for you. And then I just modulate all the way through. Obviously, if you're way up the top next to a wall or something, you can't get the car real sideways. You're bouncing off the wall, or at Lernerville, you're going over the edge, which, of course, we've all done in an embarrassing moment, I'm sure, trying to catch somebody. But
yeah, and the only time that you go over the wall is when you're leading the race. You can run back in the pack and it never happens. But as soon as you get up front or running second or third, you go over.
Yep, you just slide it right over there. And sometimes, honestly, I think that is from getting the car a little too flat. You, like Brandon's mentioned a couple times, driving it off the right front. So you're keeping that throttle in it to keep the rear end up, and it pushes the car over onto your right front tire. If you watch, IMCA modifieds, any of those, they really run right front right now. You just bury that right front into the track, keep the left hiked up under it, and that's what makes them go.
Bring in IMCA modifieds. Brandon and I are from UMP country. We don't like those cars over here.
Yeah. Well, I'm out here in Arizona now, and the only modifieds they have are IMCA out here. So I gotta hang with the locals.
The one piece of advice that I always try to give folks, and you talk about modulating the corners, is, what you're doing with your feet. I've always say, find where your car is starting to rotate, you catch it, but then you hold your foot steady on the throttle. So if that point where you use the throttle to catch the slide in the turn, hold your foot right there and it'll take you right around the corner. Then you can roll back into it. But if you're going in and out of the throttle all the way through the corner, that actually hurts you a little bit. Some of the smaller tracks, your bull rings, you've got to, there's some pretty big fluctuations there to kind of get everything to go. But a place like Eldora, holding that throttle and be able to ride right on the top, as I've always found to be really helpful, and that allows me to keep my right rear right up on that cushion, without knocking the wall down. But the next thing, I guess that a question that I would have for both of you guys, actually, the cool thing about dirt racing is, the green flag flies to where the checkered flag flies. Guess what? That fast lane can be a completely different line, different everything. So, Brandon, first of all, what do you do visually to keep up with the track? And then what are you doing behind the wheel to keep up with those changes?
I'm really just looking at how the track is changing, where the slick spot's showing up, where does it look like there's some moisture streaks, and where's the moisture going. And then I also just listen to the lap times that I'm having read out from the iRacing spotter. If I feel like I can go a little faster somewhere else, then I'll move and try something. I'm for sure I've never been afraid of changing my lanes and trying to find that speed. So I'll definitely move around and try some different stuff. Which at Eldora, running the middle there towards the end, that's almost unheard of, I feel like, because that's something that's typically doesn't work at Eldora. It's always just once it gets slick, middle to bottom, it's just railing the fence all the way around. Kind of turns into one lane racing for sure.
I saw you run in the middle, and I was like, really? And I wouldn't try to do it. And for whatever reason, I probably should have stuck with it a little longer, but I was going faster up on the wall. So I was like, yeah, I'm in a rhythm. I might as well just keep it. I'm not catching you guys anyway. So, Stephen, let me ask you, in the same theme of things, what makes you're running the top, what do you see that makes you say, hey, you know what, maybe I need to go down here and try the bottom? So what leads you to the decision to try to do something different?
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you're at. Are you in the lead? Are you
You're in the lead.
leader?
You're in the lead. You can't see what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, so I think some of that is experience of running the tracks and kind of understanding lap times. Brandon mentioned something that I think is really important, especially in dirt racing, is having your spotter read off your lap time. Whenever I'm in a practice session and things like that, maybe right before we go to the feature, I'll run something in the middle, something on the top, something on the bottom, and kind of make a mental note of what those lap times are. And I'll be like, okay, I'm 0.3 faster right now on the wall than what I can do on the bottom. So I try to, again, make a mental note of it. So whenever we're in the race, whenever we start dropping on the kind of what was the fast line by a tenth or two, I'm like, okay, it's probably evening out here. I need to go try something different. And if I've got enough of a gap, again, like Brandon mentioned earlier, I keep the relative on also. I don't look at it in the midst of a race necessarily to see if somebody's 2 or 3 tenths behind me, because I start hitting the wall when I do that. But if I am at a bigger track and I can glance down and see, I've got half a second or more, I'll be like, okay, I can try the bottom this time and see what my lap time is. That's a luxury probably in real life you don't necessarily have, because you don't have spotters and all of those things. So
you got guys with sticks,
yeah,
together.
Well, you big timer late model budget guys had that. Us little hobby guys didn't have those kind of things. You just had to wing it. But just watching what's going on with the dirt, I think that while it's not exactly the same in iRacing, they've done a good job of trying to represent track change for you, and see if, is it getting shiny, is it getting black, is it getting a lighter brown color of the dirt, because that probably means it's drying out and you're not going to get as much grip there. What Brandon mentioned from Friday night at Eldora, I saw the same thing. There was kind of a strip of moisture still in the middle of the track coming off the corners. And while he was running more kind of low to mid, sliding up in 3 and 4, towards the end of the race, I had found I was getting some good time entering above kind of the shiny black part. There wasn't a lot of room between that and the fence, but I could run there and kind of turn down mid, and there was some moisture coming off the middle of 3 and 4 there. So you've just got to find those spots where it's not shiny and black, and see if you can get your rear tire, left or right in it, and put that throttle down a little bit sooner.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've had to deal with here over the last few seasons is the damage model on these things were kind of quirky. It didn't take a whole lot to, let's say, knock a right front off. iRacing adjusted to that a little bit, and we just had a build when, for those of you that don't have iRacing every 13 weeks does a big, what we call a build, and they launch tracks, they launch cars, they improve the service, upgrade graphics, and sometimes they update tire models, damage models on the car, so that how they act differently. Well, dirt late models this time got a little bit of a different damage model. And Brandon, have you have you tested it yet? What is your first impressions of the late model after the build?
I quite frankly haven't really noticed a big difference, but I guess that's because I haven't hit a wall hard enough yet. I guess I don't really know, but
yeah. I as soon as I started asking, I was like, yeah, look who I'm asking.
Yeah,
I've run it at a grand total of 1 time since the build, and that was Friday night, so I'm probably not much help there either.
I haven't noticed much difference. Like, I didn't notice a big difference the way the car drove or handled or anything really. But I didn't hit a wall hard enough, I don't think, to really feel the damage of it. But at the same time, I feel like you guys know, you see me race a while, but I'm not really a big run the fence kind of guy. So
No, you're not, but you can do it when you sure do need to. So, and you know what? I guess I'll answer my own question because I knocked a wall down about a half a dozen times Friday night. So, getting up into that wall, and I smacked it pretty good with the right front, I think twice, and I was really, I think it was over in 3 and 4 where I caught it, and then when I got to 1 and 2, I was fully expecting to turn the wheel and the car just go straight because prior to the build, I think the kind of hit that I took, if I would have turned in, that car would have went straight. It wouldn't have turned. It would have broke. It would have broke a control arm is what it actually feels like it broke. Friday night, I hit that wall a couple times pretty good. I'm not going to mention names, but I got pinched into it once on a pass. But we don't hold grudges. But
I think you should name names, John. Let's don't say things like that.
I won't name any names, but I think he finished second. He could be on the screen here and be wearing glasses. So, I'll let everybody else infer with that,
I'll take over the host duties here real quick because I think that's a good segue into that's the mindset of a true dirt racer you just saw from John Heyn.
No.
So,
and
John,
this is where Ryan's going to have to edit the show.
Continue.
Well, and that's a legitimate thing because dirt racers do have a different mindset than the asphalt guys, and it's funny, you do see the two mindsets collide, especially in a series like this where you got a lot of asphalt racers and a lot of dirt racers, and it even carries over to Saturday because there's a lot of guys that are dirt racers that go over and run on Saturdays, and sometimes coexisting on the track because dirt racers, we're on the mindset the green flag drops, it's time to go. And those asphalt cats, hey, you got to be more finesse and then think about, setting a guy up, using 5, 6, 7 laps to maybe work a guy over. Dirt, you can't really do that. And but yeah, the mindset of more take than give, definitely. I think you're right. And Brandon and I on Friday, we were trading sliders pretty good. And like I said, Brandon, I think we could have kept doing that probably another 10 or 15 laps. And, I want to kind of touch this again, when you're doing that, and I guess, let me tell you from my perspective, when you and I were going back and forth, it was nice because I knew I could trust you. I knew that, as Stephen would say, hey, you're going to take care of me a little bit. I'm going to take care of you a little bit. Brandon, explain to me when you have that level of trust with a driver, how that makes a difference on dirt, how hard you can race. We lose Brandon? Yeah, he doesn't trust me.
That's probably it.
Brandon, if you're talking, I can't hear. But how about this, Stephen? You answer the question real quick. You tell me, the difference between being able to drive race a guy you trust compared to, someone that you don't know or anything like that, the challenges that can bring on the track.
Yeah, you definitely have to leave a lot more room if it's somebody you're not used to racing. I think a couple weeks back, we were at, I think it was Volusia, right, John? We raced a couple weeks ago, and you and I were racing up front, and at least I don't feel like it was intentional, but we were definitely leaning on each other.
100%.
But not so much that you're going to crash somebody. We both took some risks, but left room knowing each other's driving styles and capabilities that, okay, I'm anticipating, maybe John's going to slide up here, so I need to be ready to react. But I trust that he's not going to kick the back end way out sideways, because if that happens and I keep my speed up here, I'm just going to instantly turn him the second that we get into the corner. So you definitely, and it's like that in real life too. I think every track probably has one, but we had a guy that raced with us that you didn't know where he was going to be every corner. So you had to leave a wide berth because you were probably getting yourselves taken out of the race if you weren't careful. And then there's new guys that show up to the track that you've never raced with before, and you got to leave them some room because you don't know which of those type of people are. Is this the guy that I can, be right on his door on the outside going into the corner, and we trust that we're both going to go low and hold our line, or is this the guy that's going to go from the top to the bottom back, to the top again, or vice versa? Yes. So,
well, what's funny is that battle at Volusia. There was one point where, and that's one of the quirks with these cars, and I feel like we should touch this a little bit. When you do go door handle to door handle, and if you do lean on each other, these cars can get stuck together really, really easy. And I think there was a moment where I think you and I were coming out of turn 4, where we came out of turn 4 and we got kind of hooked. And we actually, and I don't know if we intentionally both thought, but we both knew how to get out of that situation. You knew because you're on the outside what you needed to do. I was on the inside what I needed to do. And we actually, I don't know how, but we timed it just right where we got unhooked.
Yeah, you just have to let out of the throttle and let it roll a little bit. Where, if it's probably if it's an official race or a hosted race with people you don't know, people are more likely just to get mad that guy came up and bump me and
gas it up,
hooked together. Yeah, and you drive through them and then you both crash.
Yeah, and that's one nuance about these cars that are tricky. For whatever reason, of all the dirt cars, these do seem to get hooked sometime pretty easy. Hey Brandon, are you back?
Yeah.
All right, one of the last topics there that also I think, and this can carry over to any kind of racing, but that anticipation, like Steven touched on about, you kind of knew, I was coming up. So when you and I were battling Friday, you knew where I was going to throw the slider, vice versa. I knew where you were going to throw the slider. Talk to me a little bit about that anticipation and how that, how that affects what you're going to do and what your mindset is when you're racing somebody like that.
Yeah, for me, whenever I initiate like a slider battle with somebody, like I did on Friday night with you, like I started that and I didn't have to, honestly. I could have just rode behind you for a little bit longer or something, but
yeah, but it was fun though, wasn't it?
It was fun. I mean, that was a lot of fun. I was smiling the whole time.
Yeah, so was I. And then a little light bulb was like, "Hey, stupid, you're burning your right rear off."
I was smiling back there too, as I could see it.
I'm sure you were.
Yep.
Probably. Yep. They're gonna take each other out.
Keep it up, boys. Keep it up.
Yep. We've all been there behind battles like that. But go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
No, you're good, because that's for sure like the mindset for anybody when they see guys that are racing hard like that. I mean, it's like, okay, if they mess up, am I going to be able to be in a position to take advantage of it? I like to think ahead a lot. So like, I know initially, like if I'm going to start this, I know I better be ready for another one coming the next corner, because I'm not going to have the big momentum I need to continue it going if they don't make a mistake. So you got to just go ahead and think already and be ahead of the thought process of thinking like, yeah, they're already going to throw another one back on me. They're going to have a counter for what I started. So you just got to be prepared for it, and you got to always be thinking ahead of yourself and ahead of like what's going on. Possibly in the future, or what's going to happen in the next corner and stuff when you're racing guys really hard. And then like if you're not wanting to slide somebody, but you're running a little bit different lane, or you're running the track just a little bit differently, you got to try to either one, time it out right to where you can take advantage of where their weakness is, or two, you just got to outthink them and use that racecraft to get around them.
Yep, and and that when you do that and you recognize, especially when you start to race guys enough, you know tendencies, and that really comes into what you're doing there, and that's really, really helpful on the track. So, we got a new season here. We've touched on it, bringing dirt back, and you guys have been great coming on here, and we've been able to kind of talk about some of our battles and stuff like that here. And we do encourage everybody to come out and join us. There's we can hold up to 40 in there, and the format is a lot of fun. Everybody gets track time. It's a cool deal. So having said that, exclude yourselves. I'll go to you, Brandon, first. who are the 2 or 3 guys? Who do you feel like are the drivers to beat, going into this season? Who do you think, if you're going to run for the championship, who do you think you have to beat to get to that point?
I definitely have to say you two, you, John, and Steven as well. I think you guys are the other really fast guys in the league right now. Outside of that, I really don't know because I can't really say for sure because I don't really know a bunch of the guys in BRL. So it's like I can say like off of Eldora, I can't remember who it was, but whoever finished behind Steven is probably or whoever finished behind you, John, they're probably gonna be contenders as well.
Yep.
I know the last practice race we ran at Lincoln earlier in the race, I can't remember the guy's name, but like he was right there with me. And I apologize, like I'm not good with names, especially with guys that I just met.
I'm gonna bet I bet you it was the car 49, maybe. I think it might have been because I think that's who's finished. And I don't know the name. I think it was Patrick something, and yeah, he was pretty quick. I had to hold him off on Friday.
Yeah, I can't really remember. But I mean, if you give me just a split second here, I can let you know here.
Well, while you're looking at that, Steven, how about for you? I mean, who do you think's going to be the toughest competition? I know, Brandon there, and I think Grandy's in here in this series. There's a few guys. So who do you see as one of the guys you think you got to beat?
Yeah, I mean, you know the answer to this, John. You're the only guy I got to beat. The rest of it doesn't matter. Anytime I get to outrace you, it's a win for me. But obviously,
how we've remained teammates for as long as we have, I have no freaking clue.
Because I let you win every once in a while, just so that you're.
No, that's it.
Yeah. But clearly, Brandon's the class of the field right now. So maybe one of these days I'll start practicing and get it under me a little bit better instead of just showing up and driving. But I think what I'm interested in is seeing the improvement. There's probably some guys that haven't run it a lot that hopefully we'll have to start looking out for, I think is what's going to be the most interesting. And for the guys that are thinking about joining or haven't run a lot of dirt, I would say that whenever dirt originally came out, I couldn't get a car around the track. This is I'm somebody that had done iRacing, could run a pavement car and was okay at it, had been on a real dirt track with a real dirt car, and it took me a while to feel like I could get the car on the track. I first thought like my settings were broken or something. Like I was spinning out. It was ugly. I was like, this is the worst thing that I've ever been a part of. I can't believe that they released this, but it was a driver problem, not an iRacing problem. So, don't get discouraged if you don't get out there and you're not running up front. Takes laps. Be predictable whenever you're out there and come and race, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, and you're right though. There is a group of guys that are quick. Your Matt Hoose's, your Chris Davis's, your John Wilson's. Those guys, I think the further we get in the season, those guys are going to be known. We're going to know we're going to be having to fight them. I have no doubt in my mind about that. So, Brandon, did you figure out who else you were wanting to throw in there?
Yeah, you just said those names, Chris Davis and and now I can't remember the other guy's name already. Wilson,
John Wilson, yeah.
John Wilson. Yeah. Chris Davis, he was running up front and Lincoln in the practice race there. Pretty good at a pretty technical racetrack, honestly.
Yeah.
Lincoln isn't one of the easiest places to get around, so that was nice to see. And then with John Wilson, he had the fastest lap as well, by the way, at Eldora.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty good lap time because he didn't do it in the beginning of the race. He did it kind of 10, 12 laps into the race, so that's pretty astonishing to see. That's for sure. Especially when the track, you already got more laps on it, so you would think the track would slow down some more.
All right, real quick, we're going to Kokomo on Friday. First, Steven, what do you expect at Kokomo? We're racing the tires out.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I expect that if the line ends up low, that I'm probably going to ram into a tire is what I'm expecting. But most of my time at Kokomo, my mind's going to midgets and non-wing cars. But I don't know that it's quite the same with the late model. So it's tight. It's going to be close. We've got a long race. So if we have a long green flag, traffic will be an issue. So I think it can be pretty exciting. We'll see if we can sneak something in there.
All right, Brandon, how about you? What do you expect at Kokomo?
Tires out. I don't see the bottom really being a factor at all. I think it's just going to be one lane right around the top on both ends, honestly, because it takes about a quarter of the racetrack out, unless they've changed it since the last time I ran on it with tires out. But tires out, I feel like it takes the whole bottom out of play because it's just so flat where the tires are now moved out to where the bottom is. Like it's too flat, and it's not short enough to make it faster than what the top would be. So I feel like it's going to be top dominant. You're probably going to have a lot of guys breaking the right front off of them. I'll probably be one of them as well because
we'll test
not
that
the greatest
theory,
at Kokomo.
Yeah, right. You'll probably win by like 3 seconds.
I mean, if that's the case, I had just had the race of my life. But yeah, at Kokomo, I've always just been married to the bottom, and then ever since they decided to throw in this update of moving the tires out, I ain't been worth a you-know-what there, so.
Yep. All right, well, guys, I thank you guys for coming out and doing this, especially short notice this week. This for anybody watching, this was not a planned interview. Where everybody got thrown in here at the last second together, so we winged it. I think we survived it. No fist fights broke out. That's always good, especially when the three of us, we start talking smack pretty good. We didn't. I don't think we have anything we really need to edit too bad. But last thing I like to do on these things is what I call a green-white checker here. Since I've got two of you, I'm going to rotate the green, the white, and the checker, okay? So I'm going to start with you, Brandon. You talked about the two cars you kind of like your wheelhouse cars. So you can only run one. Are you going to run a late model, or are you going to run a big block?
Cool. I think I would run a big block. I feel like I would run a big block just because the racing is a little bit more competitive and you can make other lines work quicker than you can in a late model where you need to let them like slowly develop. I feel like with a late model. And oddly enough, I might just be one of the weird ones that feels like it, but I feel like in the late models, aero is a big thing behind people.
Yes.
I've mentioned it a couple times with some guys, and they kind of make it sound like I'm crazy, but they're probably not wrong at that either.
Right. It does.
But I feel like in the big blocks and stuff, like, hey, it's not a big deal. You can run right up on someone's rear deck lid and not feel a thing differently than if you're in clean air. But I feel like the big blocks put on a good race, but I mean the late models do too. It just takes it a little bit longer. I feel like to get the track to where you're able to race around it a little bit more.
All right, and the next one is Steven. This one's for you. I've got to ask, what do you have against talking to the guys in the booth after a race? Because last night I saw you pull up and maybe give up third place there. So I'd like to know what. I
overdrove.
So what do you have against the broadcast crew as that VGN? So put you on the spot right now.
Last night in particular, I was trying to bounce over and watch the late model races at Lernerville on flow, honestly. So I didn't want to sit here. So that's the honest answer. And honestly, sometimes, especially in BRL, since I don't run it a lot, I'd rather give an extra point to somebody, or 2 or 3 or 4. So, I'm not running for championships and stuff. If I'm not going to win, and there's guys that I know run every week and they're close, I give them the points. I'm not there for points.
I've never gotten that treatment from you.
Well, you're not there every week, and I was going to say you're probably not running for the championship. You take that however you want.
I will say though, I feel like it's different when you're racing with one of your good buddies or teammates for a while. It's a little bit different. You race them a little harder. I feel like.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, well,
That's
after
for
that
sure.
comment, I know where the first caution at Kokomo is coming from. So, last one for you, Brandon. If you were going to start your own league, what's the car, and what's kind of the format? When I say the format, how long are the features?
I feel like if you want a lot of guys showing up every week, it would probably be, it would either be a big block or like a UMP, because there's not many UMP leagues out there, with those modifieds and stuff.
And they're so much fun to drive too.
They are. They're hard to drive. They're hard to find the speed and stuff in them.
That's
but
what
then
makes them fun.
Yeah. I'd say probably big tracks, it'd probably be around like 45 laps, and then short tracks probably around 50 or so. And then probably like run heat races, of course, but I don't think it would be qualifying. I think it would be random draw heats. That it's not the same guys guaranteed up front. And then for consies and stuff, depending on how many cars we start in the feature, heat races, that would determine then how many are we taking out of the heats compared to how many we're taking out of the consies. So it definitely changes on how many people you're going to have showing up every week. Sure. But I like the random heats. You get a different feel of guys up front.
Spies. He's giving you a big thumbs
That's
up.
an ongoing debate between John and I. And I'll also say, since Brandon mentioned the UMPs, I do have my Elite Chassis shirt on today. So
I've got my Dirt iRacing shirt on, so hey, we're all doing good here today. But yeah, I do like the 4-lap though qualifying that we have going on Friday nights. I think that's
definitely
cool.
different.
And it's cool because I mean you can't be a 1-lap wonder. You've got to put 4 good laps together. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, I thank you very much for coming in here, and I really thank you for doing it on such short notice here today. And everybody else, if you're interested in dirt, very welcoming. Come on in. We'll learn. Any one of us 3 would be happy to talk to you. Give you pointers, whatever the case might be, answer any questions. So come give dirt a try. It's Friday nights, happening in a BRL. Eventually, I think we may actually end up broadcasting them. So, you might get on the ground level of doing that too. So with that being said, thank you for joining us this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Coming up on the Virtual Grip Network, the RLR Skidder Creek SK Modified Series will be live from Kern Raceway on Thursday, June 26 at 8 p.m. The BRL Late Model Invitational Series from Southern National Speedway will air on Saturday, June 28 at 7:45 p.m. The OBRL Yesteryear Cup Series goes live at 8 p.m. from Atlanta Motor Speedway on Sunday, June 29. And catch the next episode of VGN Weekly at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, July 1st. All times are Eastern. You can see our full schedule and more at virtualgrip.net.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of VGN Weekly. Join us next time for race recaps, interviews, and much, much more. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. This has been a production of the Virtual Grip Network and the Skidder Creek Motorsports Group.